Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Lab. My name is Zan Zerbel, and for anyone who's new to the lab, this is where we have conversations with a wide range of adventurous individuals to educate, stoke, and inspire. In today's episode, Liz Craig and I speak with 4 members of Last Frontier Heli, as well as one of their veteran guests. We'll learn about Last Frontier Heli, its history, and they'll share some of their heli experiences with us. And with that, on to the show.
So tonight we're talking with 4 members of Last Frontier Heli Skiing. We've got Mike Watling, who is the managing partner. He's been with Last Frontier since the birth of this heli operation. And he's rumored to be the brains behind the hot tub in the parking lot to attract guests. We've also got Cliff Umpleby, who's the director of operations, as well as the lead guide for Last Frontier, and has been steering guests down waist-deep powder of these mountains for the past 8 winters. Also on the call, we've got Jordan Grasby with almost 20 years of experience with Last Frontier. Jordan has officially been titled the Chief Trip Engineer. He'll optimize your trip, dial in flights, and coordinate every aspect of the trip for a successful heli skiing operation. And then lastly, we have Ann Cook. Not lastly, we do have Ann Cook, having learned to ski at Snowbird in Utah and now based out of Bend, Oregon with 17 years experience in the ski industry. Ann is the U.S. manager for Last Frontier. While she's the freshest of the bunch with only 1 year of heli skiing under her belt, she's already hooked on the heli after her initiation trip last winter. And now finally, we have one of Last Frontier's returning guests of 8 years and counting, Kevin Zadel. So in our webinar today, we're going to go through the 4 qualifiers when selecting a heli operation, the then and now of heli skiing at Last Frontier, a little bit of the history, a brief overview of the accommodations, different terrain options, trees for when the weather's poor, alpine for those magnificent bluebird days, how Last Frontier optimizes your vertical feet skied and time spent on a heli trip, and we'll finish up with a Q&A if you have any questions left after all of this. Also, as a reminder to the audience, we want you to be involved. So don't forget that you can send us questions for the guests. Questions can be sent directly through the Zoom chat function, and Jordan and Marshall will be directing questions to panelists. So without further ado, we've got Ann Cook to take it away. So Ann, what's your story that led you to the heli world?
All right, hello everyone, stoked to be with you tonight. So, I did, as Liz said, I had the opportunity to join Last Frontier Heli Skiing last February. And before that, I worked at Mount Bachelor as the group sales manager and as the director of sales at the DoubleTree in Bend. And you can see from all those fun images, I was definitely hired mostly for my business acumen. It's been fun to join the crew. When I met Mike 3 years ago, he showed me this picture. And when I saw this, I was total deja vu situation for me. I grew up skiing Chickadee in Snowbird is where I started, and my dad bought me a pair of skis from the lift house at the base of the Big Cottonwood Canyon, and I brought them home and I was skiing up and down this little step, back and forth, and my mom was downstairs doing laundry, and she wouldn't come up, and so, in my little 5-year-old mind, I stood atop of the stairs and I skied my first chute. Boom, I hit right into the bottom of those stairs, and I think I've loved skiing ever since. So when Mike showed me that picture and then he showed me this one, I just had really not thought of heli skiing as an option for me. I guess I had watched too many Warren Miller movies or something. I always thought it was like you're on this spine and you get dropped out of a helicopter and, it's 60-degree spine with snow sloughing all around you. And Mike showed me this image and I'm like, I want to do that. That's absolutely something I think I can do. And he showed me this image, and then if some of you guys might recognize this song, this is what played in my head. Take on to the great white north. Take on. It's a beauty way to go. Take on. So that might sound familiar to some of you guys, but when I saw that, I just knew I wanted to go heli skiing. So in March of last year, I got to go up north and experience. I experienced the endless powder playgrounds and the staff that was super fun and friendly. I absolutely wanted to trade phone numbers with them. And I just had this feeling that I had reached nirvana. It was one of the most amazing experiences I've had in the ski world. So I just want to share this short clip with you guys about what it felt like for me to go heli skiing.
It's a fascination that basically never stops. On skis in the mountains, it's almost like flying.
It seems the further you can go out there, the more in contact you are with the snow you're skiing on in the mountains. In that moment, there's really nothing else that matters and nothing else is going through your head. That's just an amazing feeling.
Ooh, I have goosebumps from watching that. That's awesome. Gets me really excited. So let's direct a question at Kevin. Can you tell us what your first experience was like getting into the helicopter the first time you went to Last Frontier?
So the first time I went, I had talked to Mike Watling. He was the person that I reached when I called up, and I was a very short lead time. I called Mike on a Tuesday, and I was at Last Frontier ready to ski on Friday. And there was a huge storm. And I said, you know, should I come up there? And he said, hey, you just don't know really what you're going to get until you get here. But, you know, we have a pretty good history of having a lot of ski days and not a lot of down days. And we have a lot of good terrain. And so I did it. And the first time I got in a helicopter, and you feel like a rock star. I mean, I really, you're unbelievably pumped, and you fly out, and you see, especially after a storm, and all the guides are talking about, you know, did we get 30 or 40 or 50 centimeters of low density powder, and where's one helicopter going, and where's the other one going to go, and you know, all this was very new to me. And you know, we went and we landed on a very, very high ridge. We had a clear day after that storm, and it gives me chills just talking about it and thinking about it. And we did a run. It was really, really cold that day, and it was a very memorable first run. So the feeling is fantastic. And I'll tell you, every time I get into the helicopter, especially after not being there for a year, you just, if you're with your friends, you're high-fiving as the helicopter's lifting off. And if you're with, I've gone alone quite a bit. And if you're by yourself, you have to control yourself not to grab the guy's hand next to you or gals and high-five them, even though you hadn't met them before. It's that cool. So it's really super.
Oh, that's awesome. That sounds like so much fun, and just like great energy being in that helicopter with everyone else. So Cliff, let's flip over to you and make sure we're not muted. Perfect. As a guide, how did you get into guiding for a heli operation?
I started guiding. I was doing a little bit of ski touring guiding to start with, and then decided, it was funny because at that point in time I was like, oh, I'll never be a heli ski guide. I'm just going to be ski touring, mountaineer type of guide, and, you know, because I'm going to stay fit and walk up hills instead of fly up them. And I remember getting a week or two of work heli skiing, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this more. Forget about the walk.
Oh, that's awesome.
I still walk up a lot, but yeah, once you get into that rhythm of fly up, ski down, and you know, it's pretty amazing.
It's a different type of workout. I mean, skiing uphill and then skiing down after that, like your legs are pumped, but like skiing a bunch of vertical feet in a row, like, whew, that actually leads me to the two next questions I have for you is, do you keep track of your vertical feet that you ski in a year? And how do you prepare your legs for that much skiing?
I used to keep track. I would keep track to the foot, but then after, I guess, as years went by, I sort of kind of didn't stay as diligent on top of it as I could. But I think usually what on average, I figure if I make my package every year, like all of the guests, then probably on average I'll ski 1 to 1.3 million feet a year.
How many?
1
many was that?
million to 1.3 million feet a year. I do about 10 to 12 weeks of heli skiing at about 100,000 each week, if not more. So it's about the average, I would say.
Oh man. So we have a question from someone in the audience. What kind of POW boards do you ski on? What kind of skis do you use?
We're using the Rossi Super 7s. We found that they're a
Okay.
nice ski. Yeah, they're a good ski for, they're an all-around ski. They deal with our conditions the best. You know, not every big fat ski works great in sort of some of the harder snow, which we don't get a lot of, but they're kind of that middle ground. They do a lot of things pretty good. Very forgiving too.
That's necessary sometimes when you're skiing in waist deep powder.
Yeah.
So Mike, we have a couple questions for you as well. If you can remember back, I think it's 25 years ago now, what was your first time loading into a helicopter to go heli skiing?
It was kind of fun to listen to Kevin recount his, because it's pretty similar actually. I think it's that same memory that sticks in your head. But yeah, I mean, you get whisked up to the top of the mountain, and it's noisy. You get out, you're very apprehensive. There's lots of adrenaline going around. It's completely new scenario, which most guys who are sort of into this sort of thing, they don't really like new scenarios where they're not completely in control, and you're definitely not. Like, you've got everybody else is in control of the situation. Anyway, you get out there, helicopter takes off, there's snow flying everywhere. You kind of have the fumes from the helicopter. There's a lot going on, and then suddenly, a helicopter disappears, and there's just total silence. And you're left up there with your 3 buddies or 3 people on top of the mountain with your guide, and you look around 360 degrees, and as far as the eye can see, is you've just got mountains and total silence. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those, I think it's already been said several times today, it's one of those experiences which really does genuinely send the jingle jangles up your spine, and it stays with you. It's good. Like, it's, people don't just do this because it's tick it off the box and, now I can say that I've done it. It's one of those things that, it really does, it touches you in many ways. And it's not just the skiing, it's flying around in magnificent scenery in a helicopter. It's being with friends or meeting new friends that share that same passion. It's being with people who have made their livelihood out of this because they like the environment they're in. Just like Anne said, you as a guest and as staff, you meet people there that you genuinely feel like you want to hang out with at another time in your life. And people end up either doing that by coming back and skiing with us and making groups out of people that they've met at the lodge, or it's quite common to hear stories from guests that come back to say they've flown over to whichever city or whichever country in order to meet up with Jimmy and Andrew and Bob that they met at the lodge. And it's great. I mean, it's not something you stick in a brochure and say, you'll meet lots of interesting people when you come here, but it's inevitably what happens. You make some pretty interesting bonds, and I use that term interesting loosely.
Yeah, I'd just like to add a little bit to that. Most of the time I go, I've been going be here and stay with me. And so that type of overall community is really special. So I would really encourage people, if they don't have somebody to go with, don't let that be a limiting factor to going out and enjoying this. Because I heli skied the first time about 10 years ago, and I wish I would have started 25 years before that and just had less money now. That's how cool.
You can't take it with you when you go. That's what my dad always says. All right, well, that leads us into another great question. This is kind of flipping it back to Anne. What are the 4 top qualifiers you should consider when choosing a heli operation?
All right, well, let's dig into that. So, if you're lucky enough to go skiing in a helicopter, you're going to have a good time anywhere you go. And a lot of that depends on the conditions. But, there are several qualifiers that can help you to determine what, just as you get to know heli terrain and the heli experience a little bit more. There's a few little qualifiers that will help you to determine where you might want to go and what terrain and what aspects of heli skiing are most important. So these qualifiers that are just listed here, we're going to go through those in the next few slides. Last Frontier, as you can see, is actually is the largest heli ski terrain anywhere on the planet. It's 1/4 of the size of Switzerland. And what difference does that make? It really has to do with the terrain variety. So you can see the high alpine and the lower trees. The lower tree areas are really important because what they do is they allow you to get out into the trees when there's poor conditions. And so you get to be able to ski when the weather is a little bit on what I would call the awesome side, but you could say on the poor side. So that tree skiing is crucial. Right here on the left side, you can see the stats for Last Frontier heli skiing. In this red area, this is how we compare to some of the other places that you might have skied. And then going into snow conditions, we get heavy snow in early December, and then it snows all the way through April. When we say a lot of snow, we really mean a lot of snow. So snow conditions, of course, play a big part in choosing where you'd like to go. One of the concerns that most people have when they talk about heli skiing is getting stuck on the ground. You hear horror stories of people that get stuck in the lodge. That generally doesn't happen at Last Frontier Heli because we have such good tree skiing and because it's close to the lodge. It allows us to get out on those storm days. And that's exactly what I got to experience when I went up there. It had dumped, I think it hadn't snowed for a week and a half. And so I got to ski the high alpine and a bluebird day. My first day was just phenomenal, flying around, blue skies, and just the scenery was amazing, and the skiing just run after run. And then halfway through my trip, it dumped 3 feet of snow. And so I got to do exactly that, is ski this light, dry, fluffy powder closer to the lodges. And so I got to try both sides of that.
So can you show us where in British Columbia, do you have a map of where Last Frontier is? I think you had one in there somewhere. Because Cliff, it's my understanding that you've guided all over British Columbia before coming to Last Frontier, and I'm curious what differentiates it being that far north from the other places you've guided.
Unmute.
Oh, Cliff muted.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about Last Frontier is the terrain. I've worked at other areas where there's some good skiing. There's a lot of areas that have good skiing out there, but the thing about Last Frontier is day after day, it can not snow for days, and you can just keep going to the next valley, to the next valley, to the next valley, and you can get everything from high alpine to tree skiing. We have those peak to creek days that I love, when it's blue sky and you land on a summit and you'll ski all the way down to the creek. And some places I've been is you can do that in 1 or 2 valleys, but at Last Frontier it's endless. When you're kind of finished in one valley, you hop over the ridge and start again.
Oh man, just like endless untracked lines.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And then what about the snowpack? How does that compare to the other operations in ski areas up there?
I think our place is pretty unique because we have a lodge in Stewart, and then we have one further to the east up in on the Belle-Cassiar Highway there. And we'll go from a continental snowpack to sort of an intercontinental. We don't ski a lot right near the water, so we're getting into those high mountains pretty quick. So we get a lot of, I call it the ice box, because we go up and we ski in the big, massive glaciated terrain. So and it's always cold up there, hence all the snow and ice. So you can get up way up high into these, you know, beautiful, cold, dry powder conditions, which is great.
Yeah, we have a nickname for our snow, at least on Mount Hood, is the Cascade Concrete.
Right.
It's pretty nice and wet and like right around that freezing point. All right.
We don't get a lot of Cascade Concrete up there, I'll tell you that.
That's good to know. All right, Zan, do you want to take it over, maybe dipping into that history with Mike over here?
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely curious on the history of Last Frontier. Going straight to you, Mike. You've been there since day one. When was Last Frontier actually first established? And can you tell us a bit about that origin story and the hot tub there in the corner outside that everyone's posted up in? You're muted, Mike.
Mike, you're muted.
Sorry, unmuting. Yeah, I'm going to deny responsibility for the hot tub as much as I'd like to take it. Yeah, so the way that Last Frontier was started is actually there was another operation down in the southern part of British Columbia called, it used to be called Tyak's Lodge Heli Skiing, owned and run by a Swiss guy called George Rosset, and he started that up. And then one of the main mountain guides there, an old timer called Herb Bluer. He was working for Tyak's Lodge Heli Skiing for a while there as the lead guide, and in the bar in the evening, he'd sort of regularly be recounting tales about this sort of magical area up north where he used to work prior, doing avalanche control work for some of the mining operations in the area. It's quite a rich gold mining exploration area up here. And after sort of several years of listening to these tales in the bar, you know, George and one of his colleagues decided to sort of head up there and take a poke around. So they went up there, rented a helicopter and flew around in the area, and soon realized that Herb was not making it up. So, you know, the next stage to the evolution of Last Frontier was to try and figure out how you can utilize that terrain in a commercial way. And, you know, that means finding a lodge to put people in. And, you know, sure enough, the very simple Bell 2 lodge back then was smack in the middle of this area. And so we approached the owners of the lodge then and suggested that we house some skiers there to try it all out. And, you know, one thing led to another. In short, we rented that facility for a couple of years, went on to buy it, and then developed it into what it is now. So it came from pretty humble beginnings. And, you know, I'd just come over from the UK to come and do a ski season as a ski bum. And, you know, that first year when, you know, George had the idea to move things up, or not to move things, but to start up Last Frontier as well as Tyak's Lodge, you know, he said, did I want to be a part of it and put a bit of money in the pot and be a partner with him and another couple of fellows? And I said yes. And one thing has led to the next since then in a very organic way. You know, there's never been a partner in the business that's had particularly deep pockets and just, you know, built it and thought they will come. You know, it's always been a very organic growth. Customers have come up there, had a good time. We've developed it a bit. We've improved it. More customers have come, developed it a bit, spent some more money, built a few more chalets. And it's been a very gradual and, you know, like I said, relatively simple, but real growth into what we've got right now. And, you know, we added another base as well so that we make good use of that huge terrain that we've got.
Yeah, it's awesome. Sounds like a pretty organic growth. Is the Bell Lodge still, is that structure still there, the original one?
Yeah, it is. I mean, the main lodge is still there. I mean, it's been added and renovated several times now, and it's always kind of amusing when we go and do a renovation. You know, we find old tires in the roof, and, you know, secret rooms where goodness knows what went on back in the day.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I mean that still exists, and we've just put some extra buildings in there. But we're constantly changing things. I mean, we're actually right now we're in the process of putting in a new hot tub, and I mean it all sounds simple, boring stuff, but it's, you know, it's an ongoing passion. You know, you don't just put this thing there and it runs. You know, it's running an off the grid lodge is a big time and money hole, but it works.
Yeah, and the après ski always is a big thing with skiing. I'm sure heli skiing too. So having those accommodations definitely big advantage to you guys as well. So Mike, I also know that heli operations work with major film companies quite often to produce some of the ski films. Has Last Frontier ever aided in any filming or production of any ski films? And if so, which ones, and what was that experience like?
The answer to the question is yes, and more so initially than we do now. I mean, part of the problem now is that we're busy. We're so busy that we don't actually have room to accommodate film crews. Nothing against film crews, but they generally like to have an extremely good price, if not giving it away for free. And that doesn't make a whole pile of sense to us from a business point of view when you could be filling the seats with paying customers. But to begin with, when we were there, we certainly had the likes of TGR and Matchstick come up back in the heyday. I was just trying to think of the name of the first film up there that they did, and I think it was Uprising, but I might be wrong with that. I did actually just check it online, but I've forgotten what it said. Anyway, so Matchstick and TGR were certainly there. I mean, we've had people like Craig Kelly come through. I mean, we've had a lot of the the relatively and super famous folks come and ski with us. I mean, Seth Morrison has spent a good deal of time there, and had a pretty damn good time with us. So I mean, we have terrain which can service the likes of those people, but I just want to be clear out of the gate, and Anne touched on it, is that's not the sort of skiing that we're selling to regular customers, but it just goes to show the diversity of the terrain that we've got.
Yeah, of course, it's definitely a higher caliber than your typical clientele, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, there are some people out there that either want to or think that they want to come and ski 55-degree spines or 60-degree spines. It's just that's not what we do. We're generally skiing anything from sort of 30 to 45 degrees, and the experience that we're selling and offering is really good quality snow, good long runs, stability as far as as far as being able to, or regularly being able to get out and fly. So we've got, like Anne said, we've got very, very good tree skiing close to the lodge, which is what most of our clientele are looking for. They're looking for a destination where they can go and get good skiing reliably without too much hassle, and be looked after by, genuine people that they care about sending them home having had a good time. I mean, I know it doesn't sound like rocket science, but yeah, I mean, that's what we try and do.
Yeah, of course. Awesome. Thanks, Mike. And going to you, can you tell us about some of the accommodations that Last Frontier has and some of the renovations that they've done?
Yeah, absolutely. Before we jump into that, Zan, we skipped over a couple slides, and I do want to just jump back to these real quick because I'm sure a lot of people are curious. I know I was when I first heard about Last Frontier. Just how do you get to Last Frontier? So generally people will fly into Vancouver. We do have a few flights coming in from Calgary as well. And then from there, you'll generally overnight in Vancouver. And then the next morning we'll take an 1.5-hour flight north to either Terrace or Smithers. From there, you take a 4-hour shuttle up to either Stewart or Belle II. And, it really is up in the Last Frontier. This gray area that you can see right here is the picture, or it actually encircles the tenure of terrain up at Last Frontier. It is truly the Last Frontier, but that is kind of part of the allure of it. So let's jump in, and I'll give you guys a little bit of information about the two lodges. So Belle II, which Mike was describing, it does sit right on the Cassier Highway. It's an off-grid heli village, and it's just custom built, like Mike said, for heli skiing. This road that goes through the terrain is really important for moving people and fuel for the heli program. It means that they don't have to keep large caches of fuels in the mountains, and they can move people around on any given day. This is an image of Belle II. It hosts 36 guests per week. And you can see the hot tub right here in the center. It's being renovated this year. And then all the ski chalets around the side. Each chalet has 4 separate rooms. There's 2 on the top and then 2 on the bottom. And here is the room with 2 queen-size beds. You know, like Mike had said, it's, you know, it's not your 5-star luxury with people throwing petals, rose petals all around you. It's really focused on the heli skiing experience, and it's also quite comfortable. Meals are served in that main lodge that you asked about, right? This historic main lodge. And it also houses the gift shop and the front desk. There's a game room and then a bar for evening socializing. Just right out here to the side of the lodge is the heli port where you load up each morning. Right here is the boot up room. And so you come out and load your heli right there at Bell 2. And then during downtime at Bell 2, they have cross-country skiing, archery, skeet shooting, and my favorite thing that I got to do when I went up there was some fat tire bikes riding. There's a huge lake that's down towards the southern end of the area, and it was so much fun. In the day, I went back and I did it under the stars at night. It was so beautiful. So moving on to Ripley Creek, you can see right here is the Portland Canal and the Alaska border's right in here. So Ripley Creek is this really cool historic mining town in Stewart, BC. It is a stone's throw away, really just 15 minutes from Alaska. It's a mixed industry, small rustic town, and it has about 300 locals. The helipad you can see is just over here to the left. Groups will generally, the first group will take off in the helicopter, and then the other groups for the day will drive 15 to 40 minutes to the staging area from Ripley Creek. Ripley Creek has occupancy for 24 people per week, and you're nestled amongst these snow-capped mountain peaks shooting up all around you. So beautiful. Reclaimed from a hodgepodge of funky heritage buildings, lodging at Ripley Creek is really quite unique, and each room is just a little bit different. The Bitter Creek Cafe is the core for the daily gatherings and supplies. All the meals are served similarly here in a family style. The Bitter Creek Cafe is where you get to know, like Mike and Kevin and Cliff had said, you get to know other interesting guests and staff. You know, one thing I really appreciated about my trip up there is they provided avalanche airbags are provided for everybody, and they also provide all of your equipment. So all you have to do is bring your boots. And as many of you, as you know, bringing your boots on the plane is mandatory because you can really replace anything else in the gift shop, and we have skis up there. You know, one thing I would recommend, I made the big time rookie mistake when I went up. And I bought some new boots and had them custom fit the night before my trip. And that was a huge mistake because I was very sore after my first day of heli skiing.
Oh no, this is like the perfect pitch for Mountain Shop. We've got a bunch of top-notch boot fitters here in Portland, in the Mountain Shop in Portland. So yeah, if you come in and buy boots from us, we'll get them custom fit to you. And we recommend skiing on them a couple times before jumping on an airplane and taking them on a week-long trip. You're definitely not the only person who's done that though, Anne. We've had customers come back and be like, oh, I just went for a week skiing in Colorado and like, I now don't have pinky toes. Like, help, what can you do? So we can definitely help you out with that.
I was really wishing I had my 10-year-old Lanes with me. And now I've got them broken in after this last year, so I should be good for next year. But definitely recommend getting in and seeing your boot fitter early on in your planning process.
Hey, Kevin, how do you describe the experience at Ripley Creek just quickly there? I mean, from a guest point of view, how would you say it?
I would use the word gritty. And I love it because I go to a lot of different really nice ski lodges. And so Ripley Creek and the accommodations are, they're more than perfectly adequate, but you get that gritty town, and the ski experience there to me it's where I prefer to go. I mean, I've spent a few days at Bell 2, but I prefer the terrain and, you know, that week in the gritty old mining town of Stewart, it's just fantastic. You really feel like you're getting away. I mean, you're really a long way away from everything.
That's funny, Kevin. I always call it quaint, and Mike's like, I don't know about quaint, but I think gritty is a good word.
Mike, that's where you said you're based out of right now, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm here right now. I mean, I know that mountain in the background is a bit of a backdrop, but actually, if you look up the road, that's what you look at. So, yeah, it's that's where I am.
Exciting.
Awesome.
That takes us right to the next segment, which is terrain. Cliff, I'm going to direct this one to you here.
Yeah.
So you guys have a huge area to cover. How's snow forecasting done on such a large area of operations to ensure guest safety?
Yeah, it's a challenge for sure. With such a big area, you know, if you took an area like that and you threw it into the Alps, you'd have like 15 different forecasting regions. So we do all our own avalanche forecasting for the most part, but it all starts in the morning, 6 a.m. The weather guy shows up. He'll do a little weather forecast, and then he'll start sifting through the snowfall from sort of our last meeting in the evening. We'll meet twice a day, one in the morning and one in the evening. So you'll start going through all the weather data from last night and in the morning, and you know, see what kind of winds have been happening, how much snow we've had. And then the other thing that's really unique about Canada is we have this thing called the Canadian Information Exchange, or called the InfoX. And what that is every morning we can pull up this database, web portal sort of thing, and we can see what's happened at every heli ski, cat ski, and ski hill and backcountry ski touring operation in the province. So we can see where they skied, what mountain ranges, how much new snow they got, did they have any avalanche activity, and all of this information is dropped into this database every night of the winter. So we can pull that up and we can look at what's happening to the south of us. Because Bell 2's to the north and Ripley's to the south, we coordinate between the two lodges so we get a good cross section of what's happening from the whole tenure. So we'll go through that in the morning. We'll come up with our avalanche forecast, which is, we do that as a team. So we have like a group, you know, we like to think of the group mindset where we'll collaborate. We'll figure out what we think our hazard is doing as an evolution from yesterday. So we'll take that avalanche hazard and then we'll have to put it onto terrain, because that's what really matters. So then we'll go through, we have the run list, which, for example, Bell 2, there's about 650 to 700 runs on our run list. So we'll actually go through all those runs in the morning and we'll classify them red, green, or yellow. Red means they're closed and you can't ski them no matter what. Green means they're open. And yellow, maybe there's some kind of quantifiable thing that has to be fulfilled, like maybe that cornice has to have fallen down or something like that. So we'll put that hazard onto the terrain, and then from there we'll look at what sort of makes sense from an operating zone for the day based on what runs we have to access. And then as we go out, we'll update our conditions and we'll make sure that our forecast, this morning's forecast, is actually playing out through the day, sort of keeping tabs on that. And that's an ongoing process when all our guides are talking through the day to one another.
So it sounds like you communicate with various heli operations in order to kind of get a general understanding of the snowpack.
Yeah, yes and no. We have some heli operations to the south of us, but we are the last frontier. There's no one else up there but us. But we have our own two operations between Bell 2 and Ripley. We also have the highways avalanche technicians, and they're operating in similar zones in the highway corridor, and they're all very talented avalanche forecasters. So we get information from them that we exchange, and it's an ongoing process. The trick is to be there when the snowpack is born and watch that evolution and growth through the winter, and that's the trick. So we try and keep all our guides, you know, we don't have big gaps in our guides coming and going, especially our lead guides, so we can keep track of conditions through the winter.
Yeah, I imagine it's even more important to pay attention to that every day out there with such large terrain and much higher snowfall than somewhere like here in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, definitely.
Kevin, for you, I know you've taken quite a few trips out there, and I'm sure you've had the opportunity to ski both in the trees and in the alpine. Do you have a favorite terrain? Do you like those high alpine peaks, or do you like skiing in some trees?
So if I could only do one, I prefer the trees, because the tree skiing is, you get a lot of satisfaction for the amount vertical that you do, and they have some mid-angle to fairly high-angle trees in Surprise Creek and the surrounding areas there. But the best for me is my dream week is you get there and they've just got a bunch of snow and it's a bluebird day, and you go and you can see everything and ski from peak to creek or peak to valley. And I've gotten several 6,000 vertical foot runs in there that were just super. And when you roll from out of the alpine into the glades, into the trees, and you're stopping a couple of times, but you really get a great rhythm. That's super as well. And then it would be, maybe 4 days of not, if it's storming, that's okay, as long as the helicopter can fly, and really bang out a lot of stuff in some trees, and then go back to the high alpine if it clears up at that point, and you kind of get the best of all the worlds. But my favorite is the trees, because it just has so much variety, and they've got it's not just uniform trees. They have glades. There's a lot of rolls, even some ridges, and they're not spines, but it's just super.
Sure, yeah, a little more variety and a little more to pay attention to while you're there, instead of a big old open powder field.
Yep.
It sounds like the best of both worlds is top to bottom all the way.
Yep.
Back to you, Cliff. What about picking terrain for guests? How do you determine, besides the rating them for avalanche severity and safety, how do you choose runs that are appropriate for guests' ability levels?
When all our guests show up, we have like a little skier questionnaire, and we have a little, bunch of questions on there. We'll ask them, how many days have you skied? What kind of program are you looking for? Are you looking for the I want to take pictures and smell the roses program, or I want the head down and hammer pow all day program? So, and those different groups exist, and then you have the folks in between. So we'll go through that in the evening before, and we'll look at the way people arrive with one another. So if you showed up with 3 of your buddies, we'll keep you with your 3 buddies. And if there's another bunch of people in the lodge that are looking for the similar program to you, then we'll try and put all of you into one helicopter. If there's a group of people that are looking to take it a bit more easy, then we'll try and put in one of the helicopters as more of an easy program. So
Sure.
yeah, that's kind of the simplest way. And then once we get out into the mountains, we'll kind of watch and see how people are doing. And one person who maybe they're like, oh, maybe I like to go in a slower group or a faster group. You never know. So then we move the groups around through the week. So that's the starting point. That usually how it'll start out on, say, a Saturday morning, and by Sunday evening or Monday afternoon, the groups can look completely different. So people will juggle around, and people will meet each other in the lodge too, like Kevin was saying, and they'll hit it off, and they'll be buying each other beer, and the next thing you know, they want to ski together, and so now all of a sudden they want to be in a group together. So yeah, it's fun, it's interesting, works out pretty well though.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely in that second group of head down and ski as much powder as you can.
Zan, here's a picture from when I was up there. I'm skiing right there in the middle. So, we do get that question a lot. Am I good enough to go heli skiing? And, that's pretty gentle terrain right there, you can see. So if you're looking at that image and you're like, oh yeah, I could totally ski that, then you're in the right place because we do have plenty of gentle terrain, and it really moves up from there.
So it's not all just like double black diamonds all day and just shredding until your legs can't move anymore.
I do really like the picture behind Cliff's head.
Yeah.
Boundary call. It's always a crowd pleaser.
That's a good one.
Yeah, but that's a good example. That's boundary call. It averages 35, 37 degrees from almost the top right to the bottom. It's a nice cruisy run, but it's one of those places that always holds super deep protected snow. Most of the time skis like that. It's great.
So how many people are in, like when they come up to Last Frontier, how many people are in a helicopter? Like you were talking about shifting around groups to accommodate different ski levels? Yeah,
we'll have 4 guests
Okay.
in 4 guests per helicopter, and then we'll fly with 3 groups of 4 within
Okay.
that one. And so if we have say 36 people, then we have 3 helicopters with 3 groups each.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then so Anne was saying like airbags were provided. Is there other equipment provided? Like do you guys use beacons at all if you're skiing in that like prime avalanche degree terrain, like any of that kind of stuff? Do you require people to have any AVI certifications?
No certifications, but all our guests go through like an avalanche training briefing
Okay.
prior to skiing, as well as a helicopter briefing. And then all of our guests, we make it mandatory. All our guests must wear ABS or a balloon type flotation pack. They must
Okay.
wear, and within that pack is a shovel and probe. And everybody has to wear a beacon also.
Do you train the attendees how to use their shovel and probe? Like if you guys have
We
to search
do.
for someone? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We want everybody to be familiar with that equipment so that if something were to happen, they're not pulling it out for the first time under stress.
Yeah, no, totally. That makes sense.
I'm just going to jump in here quickly. One of the biggest pieces of safety equipment that sometimes gets missed because everyone knows what it is and it's not very exciting is a radio or a walkie-talkie. So we actually have, traditionally we've had, one being worn by the guide, so the guide can talk to anyone, and then someone else in the group have one. This year we went to 2 extra people in the group having a radio, sort of for extra security, and next year we'll be going to everyone in the group having a radio. And should something go down, that's really the first port of call. Is you get on the radio and you call the other guides in that helicopter to come in and help you, and they can be there within a matter of minutes. So it's that's really one of the biggest pieces of security item, if you like, that we utilize, is to be able to call in the experts.
For sure. Totally. Yeah. Do you guys were there any, like, not to dwell on horror stories, but is there, like, how do you manage when things don't go as planned, like something unexpected happens while skiing? You guys follow like a protocol for calling in on the radio?
Yeah, there's a rescue plan that we have in place that gets tweaked slightly every year because it's an ongoing learning process. Like techniques change and people's opinions change and situation and technologies change, so that gets looked at every year, and it's been an evolving thing. But yeah, the guides at the beginning of every season, as well as all the staff in the lodge, will go through a sort of a full-on practice scenario, and that rescue plan will be tested and will be scrutinized, and people will run through it to make sure that, again, should something actually really go wrong out there, that we're not scrambling and trying to figure out what's what. There's a protocol in place, and unfortunately or fortunately, whichever way you look at it, that rescue plan, to some degree, there's obviously different levels of seriousness of things that can happen, but at some level that plan will get tested every year, and get reviewed and get improved. So yeah, it's like I said, that's a good and a bad thing, but yeah.
It's a living document. You gotta go with it.
We're taking a risk by going into the mountains. We're taking a risk by getting into a helicopter. We're taking a risk by setting our foot outside the front door onto a piece of ice. They're all risks, right? And our job is really to analyze all of those risks and mitigate them as much as possible, and have experts on site that make you as a guest of ours realize that you are in the best hands you could possibly be in, so that all you really need to do is relax and enjoy the fun side of it, and let us deal with the technical side of it.
Totally. That makes sense. That's awesome. So continuing on, and what does a typical day look like?
You know,
when you're coming
before we
heli-skiing?
jump into that, I'd love for Cliff to just go over a little bit of how he chooses the guide, since we're talking
Sure.
about safety.
Sure. Yeah. So all of our, it's funny because I'll get a lot of guide resumes and a lot of cover letters. Hey, I want to be a heli ski guide, all that kind of stuff. But most of the guides that I will bring up to Last Frontier are usually vetted from one of the guides that already works there. So every now and then I might bring someone in that's somewhat of an unknown, but for the most part, I might have one of my longtime guides will say like, hey, Joe, I know this guy, Joe, he's an awesome guide. He'll fit within our team, which of course is very important. Personality in a lodge over the winter, you have to be able to get along. And so most of our guides are sort of vetted by each other because we all have to work with them, which has been a pretty successful way of doing it so far. The other thing I really look for is guides that really want to ski. And it sounds kind of funny, but I have skied in my career with guides that don't really like to ski that much. So maybe they're a mountain guide that prefers ice climbing, or they're taking a week of work here and there or something like that. But we want guides that love to ski, so that when they're out there skiing, their stoke is high. It's infectious, right? We have the ability to control the mood for every minute of the day. And so if you're not really having a good time and you're just driving the bus from the top to the bottom, that plays out in the atmosphere of the day. So we want guides that are fun and into it, and and obviously safe, certified and safe. But that's sort of the starting point, and then from there we kind of go up from there.
I mean, yeah, that two things that stick out in my mind of that is like, most of the jobs that you're going to get are like through a connection of a connection, like applying blindly, you don't always get that job, but having that connection, you kind of have that like personal vouch for them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then the other thing too is like, you might love skiing, but like when it becomes your job, you've got to keep it going and like keep that stoke alive. It can't just totally consume. You can't you have to be able to separate it. Like I have friends who have become like mountaineering guides, and it's the same thing. Like they're just so passionate about it that like if they're going up a mountain, they don't care. And then I have other friends who are like, I couldn't guide people up. It would take the fun out of it for me. So that definitely takes a unique type of person to be a guide.
Yeah.
I'm just going to add one thing to that as well, is, and I hate to harp on the safety thing, but it is pretty much the most important thing that we do is, I like to describe the guides, some people think that they're the type, a mountain guide or a heli ski guide is going to be out there, he's trying to prove a point and take the risks and jump the biggest cliff or whatever, or show off, and that's not our guiding team. Like most of our guides are family guys or girls, and, they have every interest in coming home at the end of the day safely and bringing their group home at the end of the day safely. And they're not going to jeopardize that for anything. Doesn't matter how much pressure a guest puts on them to ski this or ski that. Their main focus is to make sure that it's safe and it's fun. And sometimes that can be a little bit of a balance if the conditions are tricky and their professional sense is telling them to be conservative, which inevitably for some guests might end up feeling that that's the skiing is a little boring, or it could be more exciting. But if that's the decision that the guides take for that day, then at the end of the day, the guests actually should be very happy that they've got people making those decisions for them and keeping them safe.
Thanks, Mike.
Well, the guides, I'll just add a little bit. The guides everybody's important, but when you're out there for 8 hours with the guide, what I learned over a few trips and it did take me a couple of trips to realize this, but the guides at Last Frontier are always working as hard as they can to find you the best conditions for the day that are safe. And if you're not going on stuff as steep as you think you would like to be going on, there's a reason for it, because as soon as it is safe to do that, they're right on it, and they're always working as hard as they can to get you your best experience.
Totally.
Key factor. So let's go into, thanks, Kevin. Let's go into what happens, you know, and how the setup is for the day. So when you load the helicopter, you know, we talked about 4 guests in the back and the guide and the pilot in the front. It's a little bit of a different configuration than you might find at different heli operations. There are heli operations that have 4 groups of 11 per helicopter. And I'm just curious, Cliff, we were gonna ask, you know, what's your experience in guiding in other places in this different configuration?
Well, obviously, once you start taking 11 guests per helicopter and then you throw 4 groups into that machine, it just becomes a function of traffic in the mountains more than anything else. There's other factors for sure, but if you look at it this way, if you go into a piece of terrain, let's say the weather's bad and there's limited skiing because you're sort of isolated to one little area, in one helicopter pass, you can have 44 sets of tracks down a single run, whereas with our program, you're going to have 12 tracks with one run, which means you can translates into being able to, you know, ski in confined areas a little bit more. But it also, I think the big thing for me is having, and I've guided both programs, is it's really cool just to hang out with 4 people all day and bounce around the mountaintops. You know, when you have 11 people, you can get a connection with people, but I think it's a bit more fleeting. It's a little quicker. You know, you're not getting to know people as well as you possibly could. I know by the end of a week of 7 days at Last Frontier, you know, usually you know everybody by name. You've had a beer with most people at some point. It's a more personal kind of experience for sure.
And I'm guessing the ability levels too is a big factor. You know, I know we've talked, you know, with many people about, you know, how they ask, you know, how do you like that question that came up earlier, how do you separate into groups? And you're skiing at the person's lowest ability level in the group, right?
Yeah. With 11 people, it's definitely harder to manage that for sure. Mm-hmm. You know, with 4 people, you can usually clump people together and group them accordingly reasonably well. But with 11 people, there's definitely always a bigger ability spread, no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm. Nice. You know, and I do recommend to people, you know, we offer 4, 5, 7, and 10-day trips, as well as the heli safari and private tours. But I have recommended to people that are questioning, like, oh, you know, is heli skiing for me? There's a lot of 1-day operations down here in the States, up at Snowbird, and I think I'm trying to remember that I met the heli operator out of Sun Valley this year, Jay. And so, you know, you can get in there and do your 1 day and then, you know, get your ski legs ready for coming up and doing your 4, 5, 7, or 10-day trip. We also offer the heli safari, where you can experience both Ripley Creek and Bell 2. You stay at one lodge, and then halfway through your trip, your belongings will be taken to the other lodge, and you get to ski down and experience the other place. It's, you know, it was a good question that Mike asked, like, which, you know, what's your preference between the two? Or, you know, they each are a little bit different and have their own little charm. And it's hard for me to decide because I really enjoyed both of them. You know, when it comes to vertical distance, that's calculated every day. At the end of every run, they calculate it, and then they also will calculate your total at the end of the day. And then I love that they have the names of the runs listed on your sheet so that you can see, you know, you can look at the map and see exactly where you were skiing. trips come with, a lot of people wonder how much vertical. So you get a certain amount of vertical for how many days that you ski. And if you ski more, you pay more. You are refunded if there are any mechanical or weather issues. You are refunded for that. And, I think an interesting stat that Mike told me about that I hadn't thought about is if you come for 4 days, plan to stay to ski for 3, because you generally will have that half or 1 day down. If you come for 7 days, plan to stay ski for 6. So, in your planning process, you can add that into your equation. So hitting a typical day at Last Frontier, you're gonna wake up early, and I really suggest you take the stretch class because that really loosens you up and keeps you going throughout the full week of your trip. 8 o'clock, breakfast time. Usually the guide will come in, Cliff or Mike, one of the lead guides will come in and tell you what's gonna happen for the day and brief you with the plan. Then you head about 8:45 and boot up in the boot room. And then 9 o'clock, you're out to the bird. And for me, stepping out of that bird, my first time, I definitely had butterflies in my stomach as I was heading for my first run. It's a powder playground out there. And, in all of my years of doing sales and tourism, what's really important for me is the brochure is as good as your experience. You can see right here, this is my picture from when I was up there, and it was that Bluebird day, and Lydia was guiding us around, and it's just so amazing to be in a helicopter, and you're just pointing for the peak, and then you're standing on top of it and skiing down. Cliff, it'd be great to hear from you just some more information about, when a guide's out in front, what's the protocol for how it happens after you get out of the bird?
We usually, before we even get into the helicopter, we'll have a quick chat about, what happens when you're unloading and that kind of thing. But once you're actually clipped into your skis, we'll give the guests a little, just a little chat about how to kind of stick together and be safe. So for example, we don't ever want guests passing us. We try and ski down the hill together. Doesn't mean we have to spoon our tracks, but we want to be fairly close to each other. We'll always pick our lines based on safety first and snow quality second. So sometimes you'd be like, oh, why is the guide going over there? It looks way better over there. Why don't we go over there instead? But maybe there's a reason. Maybe there's a crevasse or a cliff or, something like that we want to stay away from. So we'll have a little briefing like that. And we always want to be traveling together throughout the day, making sure that we're always keeping an eye on one another, especially when we're in the trees. We'll buddy up, we'll ski together in case someone gets too close to a tree well or something like that. But yeah.
Cool. So let's take it over to Jordan now. Can you tell us what planning and engineering goes into engineering that perfect trip? Oh, you're muted.
I'm muted. I'm unmuted now. Definitely happy to help with engineering the perfect trip. It definitely starts with if you want or not, depending on Kevin's experience, as we've heard. Solo adventurers are definitely welcome, and I can help you with a bit of matchmaking if you choose, a bit of feedback that way with respect to who's skiing. We're thankfully a small enough organization to know a bit about the characters in the zoo with respect to who's skiing and if they skied with us and a bit of their background. Otherwise, invite a friend or 3. A group of 4 is surprisingly easy to bring together, and we're here to help. Obviously, this platform's pretty easy to make that possible. So convince your friends, get in touch with us to check availability. We've said for years to make that a priority on your list, and I think even more so now that has more priority in people's minds, or at least I've convinced myself as such. We've rebooked 95% of our clients from last year from March 14th forward. So as example, we're now filling seats from March 14th forward as we've looked after everybody from this season already. So availability is always an issue. So it doesn't hurt to put your name on some seats and rally the troops or corral the wagons, whatever expression you'd like to use. Pay your deposit. It's a measly $2,500, which is not much with today's exchange rate, given the strength of the US dollar. We're coming in at live market rates today. What are we at there? We're at $1,800, the Great Northern Peso. And that's refundable now until September 30th, no questions asked. So no risk to you while we wait things out and see what the next step is. So put your name on some seats if you'd like. And then following along our timeline there, get insurance. Obviously that landscape has changed, but the inevitability of delays or missed flights, etc., will continue. So that insurance is still there, and we have a recommended insurer here in BC that focuses exclusively on mechanized skiing, and they have the best policy for what we do. So we can help you out with that. Book flights, get in shape, really get in shape.
What are your tips for getting in shape? Do you have any?
It's different for everybody. Kevin's a swimmer. He swims in the bay. I can't imagine doing that, but he's a swimmer. I ride my bikes. Cliff likes to ride his bikes. Mike rides his bike. He does all sorts of stuff. Some people do yoga. Whatever you do, do a lot of it. Stretching, but do a lot of it. We've had returning guests again and again tell us, please tell people to be in shape. We've never had somebody come back and say, oh, I was just way too in shape for that trip. So, like Kevin said, if you're hammering out 25,000 feet of vert in the trees, you need the legs and you need the lungs. And it's not just about one day. It's about waking up the next day and saying, yeah, I'm ready to do it all over again. So get in shape. As you're leading up to the trip, I would say kind of that 6-week marker when you're starting to look at the weather and you're getting kind of nervous and excited and spazzy all at the same time. Check your itinerary. Make sure you know what's happening with your flights. Triple check everything, work-wise, life-wise. Make sure you've got your passes to get out of life and your duties so that you can check out. You want to check out. You want to come heli skiing with us. Prep your gear. Have everything laid out if you're that type of person. If you're the last-minute type, at least give yourself 48 hours, please. Have your gear. If you need to order it, if you need to borrow it, prep your gear.
And get those ski boots when you're reviewing that itinerary, right, Anne?
That's right.
Yeah,
Give yourself 6 weeks to break those in.
Yeah, talk to your boot fitter. A 6-pack of beer the week before isn't a good idea. Talk to your boot fitter in advance. They're generally popular people. Get that stuff figured out ahead of time. We can always help you. We can always piece together the pieces. We'll have somebody that has the same size foot as you. It will not be the same shape. You'll think you'll be happy until midway through the day or at the end of the night. But you want your own boots. They're the foundation of your ski experience. You wouldn't build a house on a crappy foundation, so have good boots for your trip, please.
Totally.
Yeah, and bring them as carry-on because we can get everything else, but have good boots. So that's the quick summary. And at any point along that path that you need feedback or help or motivation, call us, Zoom us, and we can help out. So that's what we do.
Cliff's sending it already over there.
Yeah, and then you make it up to the lodge, and then you're doing that again and again and again.
You know that reoccurring dream? My reoccurring dream.
Yeah, that's
a good one.
Yeah, that's what mine looks like.
Yeah.
Well, guys, to finish up here, I know we went a little bit long, but I want to go around the virtual room here and have each of you just tell us a quick, short story about your most memorable moment from your time at Last Frontier.
I'll do a quick one. It was probably not the over-the-head submarine one that Cliff has had, though I'm getting there. I'm kind of up to my crotch at this point, but it was my first trip to Bell 2. It was 2013. It was April 4th. I was fortunate to ski with one of our Grandmaster guides, Franz Fuchs. And as the guide, you always stop above the guide. So I was the first one down to meet up with Franz, waiting for the clients, and looked over at Franz. And all of a sudden we began to move together, but we weren't moving. And all of a sudden I realized that a slab avalanche was happening, and it was propagating above us. And I looked down, and there was a nice 3-meter crack that had propagated across, probably about, 300 feet across the slope. And then it just stopped. And it had separated about 1.5 feet. So that was my first big wake-up call to the big mountains of Last Frontier Heli skiing. So that was one of my most memorable moments.
Yeah, memorable. I don't know about a highlight though. Jeez.
Well, it was a wake up and smell the coffee kind of moment for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Mike?
I'm going to go with memorable rather than highlight as well, seeing as that was the official question. It's probably seeing Cliff wearing lipstick and a skirt and a pair of tights.
Oh no!
While skiing, or this was like
that, I'm afraid
sometimes just follow you around.
Beyond that, I'm afraid what goes on at a heli ski lodge stays at a heli ski lodge. So the rest is censored.
Have to come up and see with our own eyes.
So Kevin, I came up with this picture, and I was hoping maybe you could tell us a little bit about it.
Well, that was my last day skiing this year. We got a bunch of really low density, just perfect snow. And we were able to get about 10 runs in before we had to quit for the day. But we were coming down through these glades and everything was perfect. So Andre, the guide, decided to stop and take some photos. So he said, okay, lay it out. And I did my best. And so
you certainly laid it out.
Yeah, that was that day was in one of my top 5 at Ripley Creek for sure. It was just super.
Is that your stunt double, Kevin?
Yeah. No, that's me. And so, of course, I sent this to all my friends who always say they want to go heli skiing. You have a good run at Squaw Valley, and you're having a beer afterwards, and everybody wants to go until you call them, and then their arms get short. They can't reach their wallet. But so I send this one to them, and I say, I missed you, but not really. Anyway, it's a little, and then a little bit later that day, we had a super run too, because it was probably, 35, 38 degrees, but it was really undulating terrain along a tree line, skiers right, and I was going last, and they had these, they weren't spines because it wasn't steep enough to do, but they had a lot of ridges and rolls. And I was in the back watching the 3 other guests and the guide in front. And there was just snow and yelling and hooting, hollering, and just there were skis and snowboards everywhere, and people were cutting across. It was absolute chaos, but in such a wonderful way. I'll never forget it. It was super.
That's awesome. What about you, Cliff? Most memorable moment?
Careful.
Well, I was thinking about that question. I've had a few good days out there, but I think one of the coolest moments I had was probably last winter when we had the string cheese incident up at our lodge for a number of days, the band. So we had some great music going on, and the next day I found myself in this blue sky day. It was probably like knee deep at least, powder, skiing down with Matt, one of the one of the band members and my 16-year-old son. And that was the
Oh,
first time I had
fun.
been out, skiing with them in a place like that. And that was probably one of the most magical days of my life. Perfect snow, blue sky. The rest of the crew were just amazing people, and just watching him coming down, it was pretty amazing. Yeah.
All right, Ann, you had one heli skiing trip.
Out of my one heli skiing trip, you know, the thing that I remember, so I was up there with my boyfriend, May, and, you know, we're both backcountry skiers, right? So, you know, we're so used to like just working so hard to get to the top of the mountain and then savoring every little turn that you take down. And I just remember, like, when we were in the helicopter, first of all, I couldn't take any pictures because I was just so overwhelmed, like Mike had mentioned, right? It's just like, all this is happening. And then we just kept trying to stop and just memorialize and think, okay, we got to put that in our memory, like at run after run, right? It was just like another run and another run and another one. And I just was so surprised at, you know, how fast paced, how much skiing we got in. And it was just like, each run was so amazing. It was just like a run of a lifetime. Oh, a run of a lifetime, a run of a lifetime, over and over. So I would just say the whole experience was like that for me.
That all sounds awesome. Well, we want to say thank you guys for joining us, Mike, Cliff, Kevin, and Jordan, and Ann, for helping us pull this together.
That's the end of this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button below so you never miss an episode. We love hearing from our audience, so if you have feedback, would like to discuss these topics further, or if you or someone you know would be a good future guest, please let us know. Until next time, remember, adventure is better together.